Yeah, we'll show it again. We'll show it again. Yeah. Oh. And I'll share the Wi-Fi password with this.
Yes, brilliant.
And now? Oh. Can you see my screen now? Just give me a second. Actually, it should be fine.
Very secure, I would say.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to DevOps Playground here at Global Logic. So before we start, I will need to just tell you a few things first. So you need to be aware of the fire exit. So we have a fire exit right behind the kitchen. And the meeting point would be in front of Goucher down there, somewhere downstairs, on the ground floor, somewhere there. And then toilets. Toilets are by the lift. So as you came out of the lift, you would have seen all the doors. So it's right there. And now, onto why we're here. So myself, Wale, and Patrick are going to talk to you about basic cloud security with AWS. So, before we get going, remember to sign up to the Slack community channel so we can offer technical support during the playground. And let's go. Right, so I'm going to introduce myself again. My name is Wale, and I'm going to talk to you about basic cloud security. So we're going to have to start with what is the cloud? As you can see, the cloud is not necessarily a cloud. It refers to a vast network of powerful computers, like the internet, where the data and applications are stored and managed. So think of it as a virtual space that you can access from anywhere. Your data and software can be stored and used on those remote computers or in the cloud instead of your local device. So this allows for easy access and collaboration, and it's the foundation of many online services like your email, social media, and more. So why choose the cloud? We have a few benefits here listed for you. So the first one being cost efficiency, where you as the customer, you only pay for what you use, which helps you reduce upfront costs in terms of infrastructure. And then this also eliminates the need of extensive on-premises hardware. And then we also have scalability. You can quickly adapt to changing needs by easily adding or removing resources. So you can scale your IT infrastructure without large capital investments. We also have accessibility here. Data and applications can be accessed from anywhere with an internet connection. So this enables remote work and collaboration. And then we move on to reliability. So with reliability, you can leverage the redundancy and fault tolerance of cloud providers, as in the data centers. So this minimizes downtime with high availability services. We then have maintenance and updates. Cloud providers such as AWS manage system updates and maintenance. This reduces IT workload, minimizes hardware and software maintenance. And then lastly, the reason we're all here, which is cloud security. So customers utilize robust security measures and expertise provided by cloud providers like AWS. So as they regularly update security features to protect your data. So as part of that, we have data centers. In this case, this is one of AWS's data centers. Where? I can't remember. I just grabbed it from anywhere. North Virginia. So thank you. Right. So before AWS actually decides on where they're going to build their data centers, they check for environment and location. They choose data center spots very carefully and to avoid problems like flooding or extreme weather. So AWS availability zones are made to be separate and far apart from each other. Data centers are built to expect and handle problems without disruptive services. If something goes wrong, automatic systems redirect traffic away from troubled area. So they set up core applications in a way that even if one data center fails, there's enough extra space to be balanced, to balance the traffic to other places. AWS knows what parts are crucial for keeping the system working and fixing it when it breaks. These important parts are duplicated in separate areas called availability zones. Each of these zones are designed to work on its own very reliably. They are linked together so that your applications can quickly switch between zones if one has a problem, and this switch happens smoothly without any interruptions. When your system is really good at handling problems and can quickly get back on track, that's because of how it's designed. By using availability zones and copying data, AWS customers can get back up and running super fast and make sure that their services are almost always available. Right, and then lastly, AWS keeps a close watch on how people use their services. They set up the computer stuff needed to keep their services running well. AWS regularly looks at how much computer power they're using and what they will need in the future. They plan for things like handling data, connecting devices, and saving records at least once a month. So all this stuff that I just mentioned to you are part of the shared responsibility model. So what is the shared responsibility model? As you can see here, we have a lot of stuff. I'm not sure if everyone can read this. But so what a shared responsibility model is security and compliance are things that both AWS and customers need to take care of together. This way, the customer doesn't have to do everything themselves because AWS looks after many parts of the system, from the actual computers down to the physical security of the buildings where the services run. But the customer has specific jobs too. They need to manage the software that runs on the computers, like keeping it up to date and secure. They also have to set up the rules for the security firewall that AWS provides. The things customers have to do depend on what AWS services they use, how they use them, and what the laws say. This shared responsibility gives customers some flexibility and control over how they use the services. It's often talked about as security of the cloud, which AWS handles, and security in the cloud, which the customer takes care of. So our focus for today is going to be on customer responsibility, which Patrick is going to walk you through in the lab later, actually soon. Customers' responsibility for security in the cloud depend on the specific AWS services they use. This determines how much setup and management work the customer needs to do to keep things secure. For example, if a customer chooses a service like Amazon Elastic Compute, like EC2, which is in the infrastructure service category, they have to handle all the security setup and management. This means they need to take care of the operating system on the virtual machines, install updates and security patches, manage any software they put on those machines, and set up the security firewall provided by AWS called Security Group for each virtual machine. So on the other hand, for services like Amazon S3, DynamoDB, AWS takes care of most of the technical stuff like the operating system and platform. Customers mainly interact with the service to store and get the data. So customers are responsible for securing the data and deciding how it should be encrypted, categorizing the assets, and using AWS identity access management tools to control who can access what. So now that you know all this, Patrick is now going to show you what could happen, basically.
Anything can happen. Cool.
So here's the link, but in the meantime, yep.
Wi-Fi?
Yes. James? In the meantime, anyone that has access to internet right now can just go on the labsplayground.org.
Is the SSID DevOps Playground?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
For the Wi-Fi, right?
That's why maybe some of us getting wrong.
So we're going to switch this screen in a minute to show you the Wi-Fi again, Wi-Fi details. Just waiting for that.
I think it's GL Corp, but the SSID is something with GL.
GL guest.
Okay, yes, guest.
Do we have a Wi-Fi here? No.
No, so James is going, or whoever's in charge there will change it. Oh, do you have the password?
Yeah, we took
Okay.
a picture of the password.
Oh.
A picture of the password.
Fair. Oh, that's perfect then. Here you go.
I don't need a dongle.
Take it.
Cool.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Oh, I was looking for you.
Oh, my mic is on. All right, okay, cool. That looks promising. So thanks a lot for this great introduction, Wale. That's going to come up very soon, hopefully. So is it me or? There's a Wi-Fi password as well. Cool. So quick. Everyone is connected to some sort of a network, satisfying network. Cool. Okay, I'll talk to the elves. Yeah, cool. Very first step, as on every playground we've got, is to get some credentials, some workstation, which we can break and play with. Lab.devopsplayground.org, if you type your name there, you should get some sort of something looking similar to what I've got here. README, that will be your steps for today. Most of the commands I didn't forget to write down in terms of what we'll be doing. So I have it open on my left because I will be copying and pasting as we go because I'm not good at typing. Terminal is another one you will need because this is your terminal. The password is secure playground. As you can see, we're really going on the security on this one with the secure and complex password. There is also an IDE, so just same DNS record, different port. And I don't think we're going to use it much, but if we need to make any nodes or edit some text and you don't feel like Vim is the tool of choice, there's a little container with the VS Code there, which you can use. So I'll let you all get the credentials or workstation ready. And before I start, I would like to ask, how do we feel with the cloud? Or who uses cloud regularly in their job?
Systems engineers.
Cool.
What was the password for the terminal?
Secure playground. It should be under the.
Here it is. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So, like, this session is kind of, I think, as Wale mentioned, it's a little what if. And it comes from, I'm not a cloud security specialist. I've spent the last 3-4 years dabbling in AWS, mostly in the enterprise setting with some various projects in the different, let's say, environments. I've seen a lot, and I've seen a lot of things being ignored. I personally think that what we cover today should be your cloud practitioner exam, the very, very first AWS exam year. You should know this. But also, I've seen enough of reports, or even something called cloud pen testing, don't ask me more, where the problems I mentioned here today were bluntly ignored. And we're going to go through like a little capture the flag scenario where we're going to eventually get to some very secret information I've pulled personally in our AWS account, and we'll see step by step like what mistakes could lead to another and how we can escalate what we can do. It's not going to be anything with the complexity to breaking out the VM, so nothing AWS is going to call us tomorrow that you shouldn't be presenting that in public. Very basic stuff, but I hope it will be still somewhat informative, and it will at least leave you with a little don't do that in the back of your head. So in this imaginary scenario, we got on a server. You can make the story to that. Maybe it was some colleague in the train who left his laptop unlocked and went to the loo, maybe someone in a cafe, or somehow your colleague left the laptop unlocked and you are on the server. This is where we start with. There is, on this server, let's say, for the sake of this exercise, it's in the corporate network somewhere. And if you have a look around, there is some directory. Well, if I go to this directory, we have a target instance.txt file. So this is an easy step. Like your hackerman journey begins here, but we can just quickly have a look on this file. There is another address of a server. Basically, everything is on the table for you here. Basically, why do we start here on one instance rather than start on another right away? Kind of my thinking here was everything starts from the silly mistake. Someone leaves something, someone posts an Instagram picture with a little post-it note on their laptop and their password. People are reusing passwords. Generally, the first problem you get in any organization will be humans when it comes to the security and how to make them behave responsibly. So we got like literally a command above here. We can copy SSH to some server. So you probably noticed I didn't give you a password for this server. So again, this is a story of a reckless developer, someone who has no regards for the best practices. I managed to log into that server. I'll let you maybe 3-4 minutes to figure out what the password could be. I'm pretty sure most of you will guess it. In the meantime, like this is the very first step and very first mistake which was made on this account. I managed to log into this server and I managed to actually SSH to some server. Should that be the case for the servers you got on AWS? Correct. That shouldn't be the case, that I can just log in into some random instance. So what should be in place before that very first step of getting through the door? And this is something I'm not going to let you fix or, let's say, place before. So I'm just going to quickly show what we should have there, and then we're going to move on to escalating those privileges and so on. Yeah. I got a question? Yeah, sure.
Bump up the fonts a little bit for the
Sure.
on your right-hand side.
No problem. I'll make it bigger, make a clean slate. So, yeah, out of curiosity, we have a EC2 instance, which is a virtual machine in the cloud. We are operating in AWS at this point, but the principles for other cloud providers are similar. So what Anyone knows what's the very first thing attached? This is a little help to the instance we should configure to not allow random people from random office to get into our instance. You can see some. Sorry?
IP flag list.
SSH deconfig.
Security group.
That's the name I was looking for. But it does basically what you were mentioning. So I will go to my. This is the AWS console. I'm just logged in with the console access, and I have a funny panda around here. So there is a little security tab. I'll probably see it better here. On my instance, and you can see this monstrosity here. Both inbound and outbound rules are basically allowing any traffic on any port from any source and any traffic on any port to any source. And while we have an isolated account here, and we are more than happy for you to break stuff here, there is some limit, but this is something which you absolutely should not be doing on your account. And this is like for the first laziness I can see on the accounts when we run any security report. People and very common thing that in this case we got a security group which was actually designed to be so full of flows. Very common is that the resources are getting created with the default security groups. Default security group looks like this one, and developers, engineers are creating resources, and that doesn't have to be a VM, doesn't have to be a virtual machine, it could be database, it could be function, any entity which has some networking presence within your cloud will have some security group attached to it. It's really not difficult to edit those security groups. I'll just, for the sake of, I'll just go into one and edit those. You can get rid of this rule. I want this because I'm going to disconnect myself. But we can pick up the port or the port range. So I don't know, in this case, we were going for the SSH. We even have a little my IP address here. So you don't need to get to the separate website to see. This is like the minimum you should do when you start your EC2 instance. On the default security group, like also a best practice for the default security groups, remove any rules in your default security group. So if someone accidentally will attach that security group, that instance won't allow any traffic in or out. Important bit about the security groups, they are stateful. What does that mean? If I add the inbound rule for the SSH, the instance is allowed to respond to me as well. So I don't need to worry about anything outbound. I could just have an inbound rule and the response is guaranteed. So this is the closest to the server where we can define how our networking traffic is evaluated and what's allowed and what's not. Since we had some experienced cloud engineers, where else would I look for to do a bit of a networking control? Anyone knows? If not, that's cool.
Network access control list.
Perfect. That was the next on my list. I don't know if you read it or you knew it, but yes, that's another one. So while the security groups will be attached to the resource, the network access control list. By the way, if anyone figured out the password by that time, let me know. That's still a competition. We don't have.
Yeah, no, I jumped to the next host, yeah.
What was the password?
Same as ever.
Exactly.
Classified.
So yeah. Okay. So another reason why this horrible thing happened and someone logged into our precious servers. Network access control lists. Network access control lists are attached to the subnets. Subnets will be part of your virtual private network, VPC. So again, horrible configuration. We allow everything in, everything out. The network access control lists, they are evaluated before your security group. So Obviously, the advice will be have both. You can have a certain amount of control on in your knuckles. That would be something you definitely don't want to happen. Your security team said that there are certain bad ports we absolutely do not want to have any traffic on, or there are some, they're very recent from my real life experience. The war starts and some IP addresses have to be absolutely explicitly denied on your access control list. That would be where you add those, where you add those rules. The main difference between security group and knuckles, they are stateless. So if I would have to add, let's say, an SSH rule here to allow the inbound traffic on the port 22, on my outbound rules, I would have to allow the outbound traffic to where my traffic is coming from on the ephemeral port, which will be 1024 to 65,000 something. I never remember the exact order of the digits, but Googling ephemeral ports should should give you the. Also, you can see a little rule number here. So the rules are never evaluated in the order. If there is something, so let's say you got an incoming traffic. If the rule number 1 allows it and the rule number 2 doesn't, it's allowed. If the rule number 1 doesn't allow it, the rule number 2 does, it's not allowed. So the moment let's say the evaluation gets to the point when you have a definitive answer, that's as far as your rules go. Anything after, it's not really relevant. That's why it's good to use them in conjunctions with the security group, so you have like your control points into different places. I didn't really add, that would kind of fit in the networking configuration as well. We got AWS Network Firewall, which we could also configure to filter the traffic coming within the VPC. From like the real life experiences, I've seen it rather in the bigger organizations, mostly focus on the outbound traffic and controlling that. But that would be yet another point of control. So we made at least 3 mistakes here on the networking point that you are actually able to log into that instance. If someone didn't log in yet, password is the same as it was to the initial server. So yeah, we've got a few points. We should be controlling our traffic from the networking point of view. But let's look at it from a different side. Why would I need a port 22 to be open, and why would I SSH to the instance anyway? In most cases, you don't need to open SSH, you don't need to open your knuckles, because well, in this case AWS, but in other cases other cloud providers provide you with the tools that you can actually log into that instance without opening any networking holes. And in AWS case, I linked like a quick reference to what we talk, and I know it's not that funny when we talk. We're going to get through doing very soon. We got Sessions Manager, Systems Manager. So basically, well, it's called Systems Manager, and Sessions Manager is a feature of the Systems Manager. What we can do in AWS, for instance, we can leverage their own identity and access management. We can leverage the role we log into the account and use the Session Manager to actually log into the instance. It will look very similarly to what I have open here. It will be emulated terminal, with the difference that that will be still within, you will have a little AWS logo there. There is we're not going to configure it today. There is a requirement for agent to be running on the instance. It will be pre-installed on any Amazon Linux images. If for your corporate overloads are forcing you to use Red Hat, that's something you might need to install. You can have a RBAC with Sessions Manager. What do I mean by that? Depending on the role you have on the AWS account, a different user will be assumed on the instance, so you can control, I don't know, support and admin different teams, different groups log in to the instances with different permissions. It does become even more obvious to benefit from that solution when you have networks when you don't have any access, when you can't have any public networks, no internet access, and then you need to go through bastions, proxies to actually get to the instance and do some basic debugging. So probably what I would hope you to think of, like, do you actually need to SSH to the instance? A lot of times you don't. You can do very similar operation by just using Sessions Manager. And yeah, I would recommend to do that. Cool, so those are like the major mistakes we made purposely in this configuration by opening it, well, basically to everyone from everywhere. Does that make sense? If there are any questions at this point, happy to. No, cool. So, yeah, I'm not going to fix it, so we can keep going and keep breaking things on that server. So we got to the instance because someone was reckless in configuring security groups, knuckles, firewalls, and they decided to choose SSH as a way of getting onto the instance. Well, there's one more mistake. The password is allowed as an authentication. We would normally use the keys instead. That's also a bit for your simplicity to actually get to that through that first step. But you know, there is a lot of open security groups and neglected knuckles around. What's going to happen? What's the worst that's going to happen? I mean, if we would have a running application here, we could mess up with that. You could probably have a look that there are some Docker containers here. Please leave them in case you need any support later on. So, good. Am I on the right instance? Yeah, sorry. Since I lost my history, I needed a little refresh. Cool. So we are on our hijacked server. What we're going to try to do now is a bit of IAM privilege escalation. So very first thing, which I'm going to do because I'm nosy, probably worth checking, is there AWS CLI installed? It is. We can do that by typing AWS. It's not in the steps, but what we can also do, if we got access to that, we can try to execute AWS STS get caller identity. If I remember correctly, STS will be secure token system or simple token system, something in those lines, part of the IAM permissions, and we're going to ask the AWS API, who do you think I am? And that very first command gives us a bit of an information that we are on some AWS account, and we do assume the role. The role has a name, and we did assume it as an instance. A bit of on IAM, identity and access management allows us to assign roles, which have policies. The policies have permissions. So the role policies could be assigned to roles, users. So if we allow a new developer to log into the AWS account, we need to create him some sort of a user and assign the policy with certain permissions. So far, we logged into some random server, and we know that there is some role attached to that server. So what we're going to do next, we're going to see, are there any interesting policies attached to that role? To do that, I'm going to grab the next command and paste it. There will be a lot of those strange brackets with your role, you're a panda, you're something. That means that your intervention is required here. So what I'm going to do, that role might be different. Probably your panda mood will change. So I'm just going to copy from here. This is the actual role name. The ARN is populated also with the assumption and the ID of the instance, which is assigning the role. The role itself will be DPG funny panda workstation or whatever panda you're using. By the way, if you want to see a bit of a better output, you can just pipe it to JQ and we'll have some syntax highlighting. So, okay, for now, we know that we got a role assigned to this instance. If we got a role assumed by this instance, we can use it from here. And that role has some policy. So far, so good. Let's see what damage we can actually do. So the very next command, we're going to try to see a little more about this policy. So we're going to go with get policy, and we're going to need to provide a full ARN, which is Amazon resource number, if I remember correctly. And again, we can, well, let me just clear my terminal and do some. For the visibility, we can just pipe it through GQ. So we got some policy. We don't really see what is in this policy. This is an interesting bit for IAM policies. To see the policy, you need to choose the specific version or use the organization level privileges, which is a bit strange for me. But from this command, we can see that the policy has a version 1. So we can grab this, keep it in mind, and grab the next command, where we're actually going to see what that policy includes. So I'm going to change the version ID to v1, because that's the default version of this policy. Depending on how many times that policy was edited, that number might go higher. And we're going to grab the policy ARN, similarly. Did I lost it? No, there you go. Again, just for the syntax, I'll just pipe it through GQ. And we've got some policy. Okay, we're getting somewhere. We got a lot of IAM permissions. Least get. Doesn't sound that exciting. But if we scroll all the way to the top, we're getting some interesting stuff. So we're now on the server, which is allowed to do whatever the hell we want with the EC2. And I hope you will be responsible with this one. As long as we are in the EU West 1 region. And we also have an interesting permission, IAM pass role action for a role called secret read role. What this IAM pass role does, IAM pass role allows you to pass an IAM identity to the resource you create. So while I can't use this secret read role right now, I can attach it to the resource I will create in the future. And I am able to create some resources, so you can see where this is going to go. But before we're going to get any deeper towards the policy and create some resources, we've got that secret read role. I've basically got like a 3 commands in a row here. They should work for everyone, as that role is the same. We did it before, so I'm not going to go spend too much time on this one. We basically, first one, see if there are any policies attached. There seems to be a get playground secret policy attached. We check its version. The version 1 is the default. And at the very end, and again, I'll just make it a little more readable, we get down to the policy itself. And we can see that this policy doesn't allow us to do much, but it does allow us to get a value of some secret within this account. So we've got, and we got into an instance which has an instance profile and role, allowing us to get another role and attach it to the newly created resources. And we also know that that role allows us to see some secret data, or some secret. Before we're going to move much further, I will just quickly go with AWS configure. What it does, normally you will use it to configure AWS CLI. We don't need any access key, so we can press enter. We don't need any secret key, so we can press enter. Those are provided through the instance role. But since we had that regional constraint, I'll just add the default region, which will be EU West 1, which is Ireland, just so we don't need to add -- region to every command. And also, I didn't add that the region to commands going forward. So just by setting this up, any request which requires a region to be specified will go to EU West 1. Why we didn't need that before? Identity and access management is a global service, so we don't need to specify the region for this one. It's also the reason why your AWS console switches to North Virginia for no reason whatsoever when you go from any service to IAM and then back to that service, and you're surprised, where are my instances? Something which I think AWS knows about, but literally I was in Ireland, I moved to IAM, and if I go back to my EC2, unless they fixed it, but now I'm in Ireland. I used to jump back to North Virginia for some strange reason. But yeah, that aside, seems to be working. We got our default region configured, and we got a role we can assign to the newly created resource. So my plan now is, okay, I want to exploit that role I'm able to attach to the new resource. So how do I do that? I can create a EC2 instance, I need to create a new one. Before I will go for the EC2 instance itself, I'll need some SSH key for that instance, so I'm going to create a keeper. So I'm going to grab this command here, but it does need a little tweaking, so I'll just create some new file. We got your panda, so please change it to whatever panda you have, because if everyone will try with your panda, it only works once. So I'll just edit that key name to funny panda, and the output will also go to funny panda. This is the one which, if you didn't specify the region in the previous step, you will get an error that you need to specify the region. So we created some key. We should have that key actually in our home directory. Say it as funny panda. You can see there is a funny panda here. And if you're nosy, you can see that this looks like a private key. It is a private key. We will use it to get onto the instance we're going to create. So the next step, I'll go back to our very first command to get our caller identity, just to grab this time the instance we actually on, and this will be the ID. We could do it in a different way. We could curl the instance metadata as well, but since that is handy. And in the next step, what I want to do is to call the AWS API and learn a bit more about the instance I'm currently in. And maybe in a pretty way as well, so let me clear this. And again, pipe it through the queue. Close enough, but so we got some colors and syntax. So again, I don't want to teach anyone how to do bad things, but usually when someone is getting into your account and is trying to be naughty, they will try things out. Because if all of a sudden I got into some account and I'll spin up hundreds of instances, most of the people have some billing alerts, and they will realize that there is some unusual activity. So here, and again, don't get on people's AWS accounts and don't read their secrets, but this is a big what-if scenario. So in the very next step, we're going to create an instance. Again, I'm going to grab this command and paste it to this temp file just so I can work with it. But from the output of the previous command, so we want to keep that instance as close to what was initially there as possible. Cool. So what I will need, I'll need the AMI ID. So I want the newly created instance to have the same image. So let's grab that and replace the AMI ID. I will need my touchpad to start working. This is annoying. I'm sorry for the delay. There you go. We'll need the security group. I want it to be in the same security group. We've seen how horrible security group that was, so it seems like a good idea. And I will place it. Don't know why I can't click on it. There you go. My laptop is just so. And I will place it in the same subnet, so the same network access control list apply, and so on. So subnet ID. And in the tags, you can see the familiar your panda. Well, twice. So just please change it to your own panda, so we don't have any clashes. So what happens here? We run an instance with a certain AMI, just one. I left the type T2 micro. You could technically go a little farther, but please do not. Also key name, funny panda, as we named it in the previous step. So hopefully, if I'll grab this command, and if I'll ever get to this tab, paste it and run it, then a second or so, we should have a new instance created using the key we created not long ago. It's a good start. What we need to do now is to get the role we've seen and attach it to that instance. To do that, got basically 3 steps. So the very first one, we're going to create an instance profile. And again, you got your panda. Please don't call your profile your panda. Let's call it funny panda in my case, or whatever mood of panda you have today. So we get an instance profile. Once we get an instance profile, what we want to do is to attach our secret role we are allowed to attach. I'm sorry, I'm not really good at this. I'll just edit it in my temp file. So we want a funny panda or whatever panda you have today. So what we're doing with this command, we are going to add role to the instance profile. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. I have no idea why I can't switch between my tabs half of the time. There you go. So we get the funny panda instance profile and we add the secret read role to that profile. And the very, very last step will be to attach that profile to the instance ID, to the instance we created not long ago. So I'm going to grab it here again. So we're going to associate the profile. Our profile is called Funny Panda. And we will need an instance ID. And since I have the console very handy, and I can see how everyone is progressing, I can grab my instance ID from here. You can grab it from the previous commands, or you can just describe the instances to list the instances if you lost it, or call anyone around. So we as an associate IAM instance profile, that's the name of the profile, and that's the instance ID. Again, this will be the instance you created. That's what we're targeting with this command. So I'm going to paste this command, press the magic enter. This is an interesting one. Okay, so looks like I probably grabbed the wrong instance, or the instance is not ready yet. Oh no, there is already a profile associated to my instance. That's a fun one. So a quick investigation, might be someone assigned a profile to my instance already.
Patrick,
Yeah.
I don't think you cleaned up your funny pants from earlier with two funny pants. So make sure you grab your
Okie dokie.
that was created lots of stuff.
Cool. So yeah, that's a good point. So it looks like I was playing around with something before and grabbed the wrong instance ID. So let me go with the right one. Ta-da! Sorry for the trouble. If you provide the right instance ID, it should be what we're looking for. So we've got the profile with the role. The role has permissions we know about to read the secret attached to our newly created instance. So what we need to do now, first of all, before we SSH to any instance, we need to change the permissions of our key. We're going to do hmode 400, and your key should be in your home directory. I think this command on the left is not correct, as we pointed to the .ssh. We don't really need, we saved it in our home directory, so if you get any errors about the directory, that might be from there. And what we also need from our newly created instance, I'm going to grab the private IP address, could be public, and I'm going to SSH to that instance I created from this server. Since we were using Amazon Linux, I know that the default user for Amazon Linux is EC2 user. I can pass the IP address, and then with -i flag, I'll specify the key we created to create this instance. You'll be asked for the fingerprint, and there we go. We are on the newly created instance now, and we should be able from here to read the secret. I didn't run AWS configure here, and the secrets manager is a regional service. So to the command I just copied from my README, I just added the region flag, and I'll set it to EU West 1. We could run the AWS configure from this server as well, if we want. And once we press enter, we should see this really well guarded secret, which I'm going to hide from you now. And let me know if you see, if everyone got the secret, if anyone disagrees with what's in the secret. It's a bold and controversial statement there. No? We all believe in unicorns? Cool. So just to recapture a little, what the hell have we done here? So, and probably worth looking at that. The initial policy which we had attached to the instance was only allowing pass role to that specific secret read role. But, and I've seen it way too many times. A lot of times we have IAM permissions with IAM pass role and no resource constraint whatsoever. So if, I'll just exit from that newly created instance, and if I go back to command when I was actually describing this policy, the very first one, it will be quicker to just type it again, but if we get to that policy, so that reckless developers still only allow us to pass their role to read the most guarded secret. If we would have an asterisk here, so we would allow any resource, at this point we basically cede the total access to our AWS account. Because most of the AWS account will have some sort of an admin role, and then you can just attach the admin role to the newly created EC2 instance, and your company is in a big trouble. Or you will have a funny surprise on your email tomorrow that your AWS bill is over your limit. Again, the pass role, I noticed that this is like very often ignored, and it could possess a huge danger. If you have any resource which have a IAM pass role permission without any resource constraint, that could lead to a lot of trouble. So while the AWS gives you the tools to manage what you can and cannot do in the account, it does also gives you a tool to do a lot, but with the great power comes great responsibility. So especially with the IAM pass role, if you see it on red on your security report, act on it. That's serious stuff. Yeah, hopefully you can see it now, how from a silly leftover password you get to the one instance, and if the pass role is allowed, you can escalate what you can do on their account fairly quickly. We only found out the unicorns are real, which is okay, but it could be your account could have some extra resources for mining bitcoins. We could deploy something to read, drop our databases, basically with the pass role without any resource constraint. The possibilities are almost endless. We got maybe I'll stop at this point. Is everyone up to speed? Does that make any sense, or am I talking a total? No? Cool. Again, this is basic stuff, but I've seen so many times that it's getting disregarded, especially the pass role. So hopefully that will stay in your mind, that you might lose the word most guarded secrets if you do not be being careful. I'll go back a little to what Wale said about the shared responsibility model. The IAM, the networking, this is your responsibility. There are tools and means to make your cloud secure, but this is up to you. Like Amazon might give you a prompt, like your security groups are open. Maybe you should have a look on those knuckles. And even if you try to go through the IAM policy generator and you try to do IAM pass role without specifying a resource, they will give you a big red warning you're going to ignore. Yeah, if you're going to incur the AWS bill because someone took advantage of your misconfiguration, you might get away with it once, but Amazon is a business which makes money, so it might cost you. Another part which is within, so apart from networking and IAM, will be your OS. We're not going to go through OS privilege escalation here. We're going to go to most dummy privilege escalation we can imagine. I logged into a server. So, by the way, if you are still on the created instance, like go exit to the target instance. So we're not on the first box, we're in the second box at this point. You can go all the way back and logged in again if you got lost. Exit if you want to get out of the session. So I'll go. So if you're logged in into some server as a user, we are a playground at this point. If we type who am I, it's usually, if you want to explore or be malicious, it's usually worth to check, is my user added to a sudoers list? And in AWS, in Cloud Realm, this is on you if you add the user to the sudoers user or not. So I'll try to assume the root from this user and see if that's gonna work. We'll need to retype our password, but we already guessed that one. And you can see that we do successfully assumed the root. Generally, be careful of who do you allow to be a root. There are ways of escalating the privileges without being explicitly added to the sudoers list. But they are a bit more complex than what we did just now. This is just being reckless. Once we assume that new user, I wanted you to get back to that command. We go at the very beginning, sts get color and identity, and see if there's anything new. And yeah, maybe a question. Do you see anything different comparing to the very, very first time when we executed this command? I can even bring back. So the very first time it should look no, that's not the one, sorry. Kind of like this on the left. So the very first time we had an assumed role. We had a role, and we assumed it as an instance. In this case, we have a user. And why is this happening? That we have a user, we established that there is a role attached to this instance. Why the hell I get some user here? This comes from how AWS CLI is getting its credential and how it's configured in this case. The instance role will be the last place for AWS CLI as a tool to look for the credentials. The AWS configure, as you can see, was asking for a secret access key. So since I'm here, I'll set up my region to EOS1 as a default. So there is a credentials file stored locally. You can also provide those credentials as an environment variable. And this is, again, something I've seen quite a few times, and it's a bit scary. I'm going to have a look for environment variables. We can do it by typing env. I'll just grep for AWS. And here we go. Those are access and secret keys. Now everyone watching this on YouTube can see. Thankfully, it's like securely unsecure, so we'll explore what we can do with those. This is something I've seen more than I should. A lot of times the access and secret keys are added to bash profile, exported to the as environment variables on the boot every time we switch to a user. And obviously when someone is on the server, they can take advantage of this. Yeah, you could copy, paste them. You could copy those credentials, use them from your local machine. Again, sky is the limit. What we're going to do, nevertheless, we're going to see how far this Funny Panda user can actually take us, and what we can do with this policy. There will be not much of a surprise there, but so the next command. Let's have a look. In this case, we look on the user policies, but let's have a look what is attached to that user. And the user was called for me DPG Funny Panda. Yours will be slightly different. And there are no policies. Weird stuff. Why is that? We do get something because we can actually query that. That would suggest that there are some policies attached to this user. Why we don't see it? In AWS, we have policies and inline policies. The standard IAM policies, you define them and attach to different entities, to roles, users, groups, and so on. Inline policies are embedded in the user role or whatever entity we talk to. We can combine, we can have some inline and standard IAM policies. So we can, to have a look what inline policies we got attached, we can execute the next command, which is list user policies rather than list attached user policies. By the way, it works similarly for the roles. We didn't really look for any inline policies for the role, but if we would like to find that distinction for the role, same. Get role policies, get attached role policies, something in those lines. So if we have a look on those inline policies in this case, we see that there is some policy attached. So now when we got a username and a policy name, let's get to the bottom of this and go for get user policy. Our user will be still DPG Fanny Panda. And our policy name you see why I copy and paste everything. I can't type a word when the word is watching. The policy name will be policy DPG Fanny Panda. Again, we got some big policy. I can maybe beautify it a little. Again, a list of basically this is what a list and get IAM actions are, and apart from that we can see a familiar one. Again, we can read some secret. In this case, it's a different secret. It's called user secret rather than a playground secret, but it is a secret nevertheless. So as a very, very last step, we've done this operation before, but we're going to read last remaining secret we can read from this instance in this setup. So we're going to go secrets manager. I think I did AWS configure already, so I don't need to specify the region. And we're going to read a secret, which hopefully at this point shouldn't be a secret for you anymore, because our secret says that you should protect your API keys. Again, something obvious, something you've been told millions of times. But yeah, be very careful when you play around locally, when you update something with your GitHub repo. And also, again, like similarly to, do I need to SSH to the instance at all? Or it'd be, do I need to have API credentials at all as a developer, as a user? Because obviously in the more elaborate setup, you usually have some CI/CD, some infrastructure, some way of managing your infrastructure. I don't know, if you use Terraform Cloud to manage your AWS infrastructure, this is where your access and secret key will be stored securely. And then if you work locally, you can kind of connect through the Terraform Cloud. If you, yeah, I don't know, apart from, if you really need to check something, let's say, just out of the box for your IAM role, they released not so long ago something called Cloud Shell. So again, I have the IAM role. I don't have to have the API keys generated for that role, but I can inherit the permissions of that role by just entering the Cloud Shell. And at this point, we will be a different user. I know how small it is. I'll make it bigger. Or I'll not. Sorry, I can't zoom it in. But we can't use the Cloud Shell to perform any operations against AWS API while logged in into the account, and we can inherit whatever the role we have to execute commands from here. So again, there are cases when you need to have API keys. There will be third-party vendors which will only provide their services if you share the API key. well, if you create a user for them and provide them with their service with the API keys, but if you have to use them, make sure that you rotate those credentials in a reasonable intervals. But all in all, if you don't have to use them, don't. If you don't have them, you're not going to lose them. That's the general rule. If you use any CI/CD tooling, they usually have a way of storing them in a secret manner. Yeah, absolutely do not share them on YouTube like we did today. But again, the only thing that we know that can happen with those credentials is someone's going to learn to take care of their API keys, protect their API keys. That's fine. We're fine with the word reading the secret from our account. Again, those are just the examples of. I choose the reading the secret because it's like kind of an obvious one, but the idea was to show you that if you're not careful, this is what can happen. So that was the very last bit from this lab. I know it was basic. I hope it wasn't too basic. I would love everyone to say that, we knew that already. Why do you bother us? But my experience showed that even some engineers with experience got lost in that sometimes. So I thought it was worth it. And yeah, if you got any questions, it doesn't have to be clearly related to this, but fire away before the pizza arrives. I can hear that the pizza is arriving, so any questions, anyone? If you got anything online, let me know as well. Anyone hungry? That's the hungry one, not the question.
Yeah.
All right, we good to go? Right, well, thanks a lot. I hope it wasn't enough questions because it was clear enough. All right, go on, Judge. Hang on, you'll get a box now. I mean, we paid good money for this box, so now you need to use it.
Okay. Sorry. So if the instance is deployed from the private subnet.
Yeah.
Yeah. From your console now, can you still access it with these permissions?
So the instance is in the private subnet.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we're talking like this target instance we got on the first place, and I deploy the instance from there, I did SSH to that third instance using the private IP, if you notice. So in this case, like I get to the first, let's say, entry was to the instance which has a public IP address. The next one didn't have to have the public IP address. It did. But let's say the moment you get into the private network, it will be likely that you can spin up another instance in that private network. And because you are in the same network, you can still connect. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, there is this new technology that AWS introduced, I think, in June.
Serial console? Or?
No, Open Tunnel. Open Tunnel, with that, you can connect even from your local host to an instance that is in private subnet.
I haven't played with that a lot, to be fair. So
with
the
that
state
you
of
can
knowledge
connect with your private IP.
So
with the private IP of the instance that is on private subnet. Not the, normally if you want to do SSH, you connect with the public key.
Yeah.
Yeah, with that, you can connect with the private key of the instance that is on private subnet.
Is that with the direct connect established?
Yeah, direct connect.
EC2,
instant connect.
Right, so but if you got a
but before that, I think you need to create a VPC endpoint first.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's say to get to the instance in the private subnet, that would be you could
from
have
your local host.
So,
and also you can connect with any other port apart from port 22.
Okay. So I would expect that there is some sort of a VPC peering there, or as
No,
you said,
there's not. It's different from VPC peering. It's just this June.
Okay.
I actually had an interview, and they asked me this question. So it was after the interview that I went to check it. But I noticed that it was just introduced this June.
Okay, because I know that they introduced the serial console, I think, which it's not exactly what an SSH would give you.
Yeah,
But yeah, generally,
with
usually you
this,
need some sort of
according
a.
to AWS, they said that it's more secure than any other
Well, I
way
need
to use to connect with it. With that, you can decide on any particular port that you use to connect with it from your local host or any machine, but it's more secured because you're connecting with the private
So I would expect that if you have a
IP.
private subnet and you connect from your local machine, you would have to have some sort of a direct connect gateway to accommodate that, which would be an enterprise scale solution or some sort of a NAT gateway to do the translation.
Yeah, this one you won't use NAT gateway. You use EC2. You know, normally you can connect with EC2 Instance Connect. EC2 Instance Connect from the console.
So that would be a
Yeah, if you
sessions
go
manager.
to your console, you will see EC2 Instance.
Right, now I'm curious. All right.
Yeah.
That doesn't work. Cool. So he said EC2.
Yeah, go to one of the instances and try to connect.
So I'll grab some random one. So basically,
Mhm.
we got the. Is that what you?
Yeah, you know, this one now at the left, that's the one that you picked now. It shows that private IP, no public IP. You can use public IP to connect. But if you pick the other one, it will show that you can connect with private IP.
They all have public IPs at this point. So
no, check. You can check this one. The second one. Yeah. With that, you can connect with private IP.
All right. Okay. That's interesting. I haven't used that, to be fair. So something new.
Yeah, if you configure this one, you can even outside the AWS environment, you can connect from your local host with that private IP direct to instance that is on private subnet.
So I presume that they work similarly to the VPC endpoints and they do some translation on the way. That's cool.
Yeah, according to them, they said that this one is more secure than any other.
Yeah, I like it. I suppose you need to configure something
Yeah, VPC endpoints.
in
Just
there.
like
But
what you said,
yeah, that's good to know. It's a nice one. Well done, Josh.
Thank you.
All right, cool. Anyone else has something I don't know to?
Sorry. Yeah. What would you suggest if I, for example, want to learn more about cloud security, not specifically for AWS? Maybe is there some kind of certification? I know there are like SaaS cloud certification, but those are quite expensive to get it.
Yeah, so I think I would say that so each. I know more AWS, but I know that most of them look similarly. So, in terms of AWS, there is a specialty security certification.
But when I checked that, it was mostly for like security architecture, wasn't it?
Well, so the AWS certs, like I don't. At least this is my opinion. So they not fully for engineers anyway. Like they are all have a sales element. So yes, while they give you a pretty good overview, you need to prep knowing the principles.
Yeah.
The questions will be what AWS, GCP, Azure product you would use in this scenario, depending on what certs you would say. That I'm not a big on certifications for that reasons. I don't know if there's like a universal cloud security cert you could go for. At least I don't know about one.
Okay.
Go for it.
Thank you.
Just to add on for what he said, I had a really good experience with Google Cloud Skills Boost. They actually have AWS labs on the Google and on that lab, and also Azure ones. So just to mention that.
Actually, this is something I learned recently. Like I've been locked with AWS for a long time and starting to like working in the organization when we have I think IBM, Azure, Google, and AWS. Don't ask me why. That I think both each cloud they do also like trainings for I don't know GCP for someone from AWS or the other way around, and I found them very helpful, like a nice accelerate in opposed to trying to learn the new cloud from scratch. They give like a nice references to okay, you've seen this as a Lambda in AWS, this is Google Functions, those are the differences. So for the learning that was beneficial. Anything else before the pizza? It's there, so don't feel pressured. But happy to answer, of course. Then yeah, I'll be around as well, so we can have a beer and pizza and more questions as well if nothing comes to mind right now.
Maybe just a quick one.
Yeah, go
How
for it.
many of those issues would have been spotted if you had enabled AWS Security Hub? Just a quick one. That was it. For everyone else, this is how many exploits would have found there if we used AWS Security Hub?
So the Security Hub would have struggled to find that I left the credentials in environment variable, but pass role definitely, security group knuckles definitely. That's like, so the reason why I choose those and why I felt that this is very obvious, this is what comes first on every security report. But after a few months, when you see the same records, that's kind of where the inspiration was. But AWS is doing a pretty good job telling you, like, this is wrong, fix it. It just, you need to react to that. I find very useful as well, and it's more of a debugging and, let's say, working with the AWS networking and seeing where the problems are. The reachability analyzer, VPC reachability analyzer, I find it a very powerful tool where you can see if you can get from a certain instance network interface to a different one in a different account, same account, or from a certain source. I find it very useful when I got stuck or when someone was, this is your problem. Because if you run the analysis, it will show you step after step. Okay, it starts from this instance. There is a security group. There is a knuckle. There is this. There is that. And gives a nice visualization of what happens one after another, and then basically a straight message if something goes wrong. I find it very useful when I was dealing with a lot of VPC endpoints and like a bit more complex networking setups, but for the basics it might be also handy.
This one, thanks.
Cool. I can see it's silent enough to call pizza and beers now. Well, you want to do some pictures? You need to voice yourself. No? Yes? There's a shy photographer.
Oh, yeah, it's just, there we go.
Yeah?